in his last 3 years of life came through our work and wrote his eulogy. I had the honor of reading that eulogy at his funeral. Be the strongest man at your father's funeral. The strongest man in the room was a 14-year-old boy. How is his son?
If this was my last day on the planet, what would I be remembered for? And I think we have idolized youth and ignored and discarded the wisdom, the discomfort, and the reality of death. You don't cry and lose the plot in front of your woman, because I don't have it together if I'm a weeping wreck on the floor. Like, who's at the fucking helm for a start?
I don't like the word vulnerability. I actually see vulnerability as a disowned state. It's going to be controversial to say that. I don't believe in it. I believe men should be honest.
I read this book called The Grace in Dying. There's a phrase in it, dying is very safe. I think just really highlighting for me how fundamentally important dying is to living.
Welcome to the Primal Man Project podcast. I'm Jason, the founder of the Primal Man Project. I have with me my bro, Callum Bell. For those who don't know me and my work and what we do, I'm a founder of a men's personal development movement that is founded around the idea that men in the modern world are living a long way from the way we were designed. And what we do is to help men create more impact in their lives and more abundance of freedom, time, money, by living in alignment with our evolutionary design. And what that looks like is rites of passage, online community and coaching programs, and business masterminds. And as part of that journey, we have epic conversations with incredible men. First among whom, Callum Bell. Bro, introduce yourself. What would you say to a group of people sitting at a dinner party who had no fucking clue who you were?
That is a great question, Jay, and one, because I'm a dynamic person, has changed a lot over the years. I am describing myself at the moment as a master generalist. So over the last 20 years of working, I've got 3 trades under my belt. So I'm a mechanic, a chef, and a builder. But really, where the rubber hits the road for me has been in the personal and spiritual development world, which has also been well over a decade of intentional involvement in that. And through support with Primal, I have boiled it down to a purpose, which is to reconnect people to the sacred, the mystical, and the magical reality of the human experience. That takes the form of a few little irons I have in the fire. Obviously, I'm deeply involved in the work that we do together in Primal, and I'm really passionate about that. That has really brought everything together for me. And I'm also the co-founder for a fledgling retreat center that's being developed up in the South Burnett near Bundaberg, along with a few other passion projects, but really seeking out and showing people that this isn't just a normal material existence. This is a magical, wild mystery tour all.
The Magical Mystery Tour podcast. I'm looking forward to being a guest on yours.
Yeah, brother.
And for those who are curious where we're going with this conversation, Cal and I have had a long history of having incredible, expansive, and deeply profound conversations about everything from meaning to masculinity, the nature of existence, consciousness, spirituality, and anything in between. And we said for years, we wished we recorded those conversations. And so this podcast is inspired in part by having those conversations. So, brother, what is alive, man? What's happening in your world that's of interest and got some juice?
Well, what immediately springs to mind, Jace, is the transience of human experience. So I'm currently caring for a man who is 89 and passing from this world into the next slowly. And I'm observing the reality to return to a childlike state of helplessness, that this being true is a transient, and all of us are really transient, and it has an end attached to it. And it's an extraordinary exercise in patience and graciousness, and someone that starts to forget who they are. And this thing that, like, I'm so identified with, my mind and my ego and my thoughts and dreams and aspirations, one day it's going to wind up. So there you go. There's one straight out of the gut that's pretty present for me at the moment.
Yeah, it's been something that I've spoken about with people a lot. I grew up in PNG, and death was very close in the sense that mortality rate was higher generally, and also the process of acknowledging and celebrating someone's death was done very close proximity to, family and to community. And so they didn't keep children from funerals. They didn't put old folks into homes and separate them. They, like any tribal society, had elders, a very active part of life. And then their death was very visible. And, it's one of the things I see that we get wrong in, Western society is the segregation of our elders and the abstinence from the gift of the lesson and the teaching that is death. What are you learning?
Well, the first thing, I read this book called The Grace in Dying. I've started reading it, but there's a phrase in there: dying is very safe. And I think there's been a few people have probably said that over the years. But I think just really highlighting for me how fundamentally important dying is to living. We just had a guest speaker in one of our containers, and one of his exercises each morning was doing the deathbed exercise. If this was my last day on the planet, what would I be remembered for? And I think we have idolized youth and ignored and discarded the wisdom and the discomfort and the reality of death. Like, I read this really interesting phenomenon that was, I think, in the sort of 1800s, late 1800s, every home in Europe used to have a parlor, and that was where the body was laid out for a wake in most European cultures. And there was a marketing campaign, I think at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, that changed it to calling it the living room. And bodies were taken to morgues, and funerals were had at funeral homes. And it took that opportunity for grieving away from people. And I'm just really keenly aware now of how sterilized the whole experience is. Adam and myself are really committed to the best we can keep Chris at home through this process and not kind of outsource it. As easy as that would be, and as fucking I can be real, it's really demanding looking after someone who's old, tenacious billy goat, but and clinging to life. We're all clinging to life, but the body's shutting down. And so, it's I think we do ourselves a disservice in seeking the comfort of not having to look at that.
The Stoic practice of memento mori, so the saying goes, the Stoics would keep a coin in their pocket, and the coin was often had a cross and a skull, and it symbolized the moment of your death, memento mori, moment of your mortality. And the question they would ask themselves is, would this moment now, or this concern, be relevant to me at the moment of my death? And if the answer is no, does it need to be of significance to me now? And then deeper than that, if I'm present to the fact that I'm going to die, how would I live my life differently? And you're familiar with the process that we do in the path of writing your eulogy. Yeah. And one of the most one of the most profound moments in my stewardship and leadership of this community was getting to read Rod's eulogy at his funeral. So Rod was a dear brother of ours who was one of the men in our tribe and such a vibrant and amazing man. May he rest in peace. Had a long journey with cancer, and in his last 3 years of life, came through our work and wrote his bucket list and created a vision for his life and identified purpose and wrote his eulogy. And I had the honor of reading that eulogy at his funeral. And the ripples that went out from the impact that we had in his life were evident. His two children, the elder of whom is a 14-year-old boy who really fulfilled on the mantra that I've heard from Jordan Peterson, where he says, be the strongest man at your father's funeral. The strongest man in the room was a 14-year-old boy. That was his son. And both his son and his daughter gave the other speeches at his death, and both spoke about the idea of gratitude and being grateful for their life. And that was a practice that, Rod had taken home from his experience on the spear, and seeing a room full of people assembled there to honor Rod's passing, all receiving the wisdom of these teenagers who had brought that practice of gratitude into their life, and how powerful it was as a reminder for me, both to be present to the fact that I'm going to die and to be present with how I can be grateful, because at 52, he was done.
Mm.
I've got, by that measure, touch wood, God willing, I would have 12 years left. What would I do with my life if I had 12 years left and if I was present to that?
It's an intense question, man, and I think like so much of the this is why my purpose is so close to my heart, is that I think so much of what our culture has created in the loss of all our mythology and our spiritual traditions is that death is terrifying. It's this idea of complete obliteration, and it's sad, and we don't know how to celebrate it anymore because we've lost any of our context to say, hey, the ego might resolve, but whatever spirit essence there is goes back to a source, and there's like the continuous cycle of experience keeps happening. Like I'm reading this amazing historical fiction called Shogun, adapted into an excellent show on Amazon, feudal Japan. And they basically had one punishment in Japan, which was ritual suicide, or you were killed. Theft, adultery, all of these things. And their attitude to life and their relationship to the afterlife was so complete and utterly entrenched that to die was better than to be dishonored. And this idea of like, we've lost, I can't remember, this is a snippet I saw on the net. We've taken all the honor out of an honorable death. Like you can't go to war and seek fortune and go down in glory anymore. It's like, I don't know, it was weird. It prompted some interesting thoughts, but a man can't go and find an honorable death anymore.
No.
As culture didn't provide that for them. And then
I was just laughing because
is an honorable death.
I'm laughing because I saw a snippet recently that was, fact checking a statement that in the Nordic tradition, in Viking culture, there are two ways a man can enter Valhalla: one in battle, and two through in between the thighs of a woman.
Why aren't they close to each other? The agony and ecstasy. You look at someone's face in orgasm and they could be in intense pain.
100%. And I was actually thinking. I was thinking about the portal of life. It's like we come in through the world, and if we left, I tell you what, there'd be worse ways to die.
There would be an honorable death, but
an honorable death.
It does, the sterilization of it and our refusal to look at it. It's like I've just finished listening to Alan Watts' Essential Lectures, which I've got re-listening to capacity for sure, but he has such a good sense of humor in highlighting that this is a transient dance of mind. It feels really real and it looks really real, but this is a cosmic dance we're engaged in. It's a play. We're all actors on the stage. It's but we don't have any mythology to support that anymore, and so it's all very real and very serious. And fuck, that's exhausting. It's exhausting and stressful. This is really real and really serious, then I'm in some trouble.
Well, it's interesting when I hear, I'm not sure who the British comedian is, the one that does the piss takes at the Oscars.
Ricky Gervais.
Ricky Gervais, who's a very outspoken atheist. And I think there's either a movie or a TV series that deals specifically with this idea. And he's being challenged by someone saying, what is the significance of life if you just go on to die? And he said, well, no, it actually makes it more precious. So I think there is, on one side, a hedonistic tendency that's baked into the individual pursuit of benefit and pleasure, and the emphasis on experiencing life and its pleasures, and make, even just the idea from the Constitution of the United States, it's like the pursuit of happiness is one of the lines. And if you ask anyone in the Buddhist tradition, you'd know this better than me, they'd say happiness is not the goal. happiness is pleasure, happiness is joy, happiness is fleeting. And if you were to ask, and I saw on a Diary of a CEO clip, one of the famous sort of Shaolin style monks, and he said, "Are you happy?" He said, "This is an interesting question." He said, "I'm more interested in peace."
Mm.
And I really had to sit with that. And he said, "Happiness comes and goes. Sadness comes and goes." He said, I'm interested in the peacefulness that exists in between.
Mm. Well, if I could speak to that, Jace, because I'm about 3 hours into the erotic and the holy. And that idea of that detachment is a strategy, not the outcome. That the goal is actually complete involvement in whatever is happening right now. So if it's sadness and grief, it's complete identification and complete experience of that sadness and grief. If it's happiness, complete involvement. If it's peace, completely peaceful. But it's I really love that distinction. That if we're here to create meaning, meaning's going to be here and now, and going to be able to be experienced through my mind and through my senses and through my embodiment. So it's not necessarily, detachment isn't the end goal. Detachment is a strategy and an evolution of being able to observe yourself. But the ultimate experience of being human is to be completely and utterly human right now, right here. That's, man, I'm loving that book recommendation.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. The idea that everything that we experience is an expression of eroticism, that everything is erotic, that emotion is erotic, connection is erotic, and that eros is the experience of the fullness of life, and how absent it is, and how it relates to essentially the sanitization of eros and eroticism also relates to the subjugation and the oppression of the feminine wisdom, the feminine principle, the feminine essence, and also, women as an expression of the feminine. And that essentially the world as it has become is fundamentally masculine. We pursue our individual benefit. We create and develop abundance and things, and we achieve and we do and we measure and we build and we expand. And that loses the balance of the yin, the feminine, the other side of the paradigm that was essential if we wanted to exist in homeostasis, if we wanted to exist in harmony and balance and equanimity and equilibrium amongst the forces of nature. And the study that book was connected to in my own preparation for the Grail talked about these two competing cultural forces in the Proto-Indo-European history. Predates English, predates all of the Latin languages. There was this race that came across from the steppes of Middle Asia and brought with them the myth of the sky god, Father Sky. The ancestors to the Celts that lived in Western Europe at the time revered the mother. And so you literally had the meeting of these two cultures, which we are the origins behind Mother Earth and Father Sky, met, and the dominant, warlike, aggressive, expansionist cultures that came from those Proto-Indo-Europeans actually succeeded essentially in creating the early foundations that were then the Greek, the Roman, the Norse, cultures which have masculine principle deities. So
fascinating, man. The sort of advent of matriarchal societies within those more Gaia-oriented, animistic, native populations, wherever you go in the world, I ponder that a lot. What philosophical parting of ways there was that saw, particularly Western Europe, go into this, what we're still dealing with, this hyper-individuation and this masculine god of rules and regulations, and this, I guess, the birth of our science and the reduction material, categorize, organize. It's a really, really, God, that's a huge can of worms, man. I'm really quite intrigued by it. I don't have any concrete answers as to why things did go the way they did, but I think we need to, within ourselves, seek the balance of that, let the pendulum come back into some equilibrium, and we're stuck in human doing right now. We're stuck in the getting shit
Yeah.
done, and you've forgotten the being bit.
Yeah. And I see this. Yeah, there's so much in here. So I see this playing out not just for men but for women. A lot of the women that are in the outer rims of our, community, as in partners of the men in our world, or women that I get to meet and connect with, who are also in their own work, right, doing their healing. The almost inevitable journey to realizing that women in the modern world are hard coded into being and forced into their masculine. Modern women are forced to operate in a system that has them almost exclusively in their masculine. And when they begin to connect to their body, become aware of that masculine and feminine balance, they almost universally say, I feel dysregulated. Their hormones are often out of sync. They often have difficulty menstruating, having children, having fertility issues. It is having them dry, unhealthy, unhappy, out of their essentially core human nature and human essence of being, the original seat of the original seat of the seed of life. And yeah, so much compassion.
Well, the reverse is true for men. Like how all of us that come through the world, I'll speak for myself, but I've seen a lot of it, nice guys stuck in the feminine. And so it's like, yeah, there's absolutely no winners right in this current paradigm, the way we've set things up, because men are disempowered, passive, not getting fulfillment out of their work or their relationships. And yeah, so it cuts both ways in that both of us, the masculine and the feminine as a whole expressed are sort of fulfilling opposite roles. And it's no wonder, like I was literally having this conversation with someone yesterday, that the collapse of the social contract around partnership. Like I want to have a family and homeschool my kids and have my wife stay at home. I'm not going to find that person. I will have a story around it, but I don't want to go and seek that person out on Tinder. And I think about the sort of, if you go back 100 years, the entirety, inviting a woman to a dance. So the social contract was that you would go to dances on the weekend. You had to have a partner. You were then intimately close and erotic with them without being sexual. You were close. You're moving in tandem. The man is leading. And the whole cultural paradigm was geared towards, the expectation was that you would get married and have a family. That was the norm. And, I was chatting to this woman, she's got 2 sons my age who can't find partners. They're both farmers, so their opportunity to meet people living rurally is next to nothing. And I think I see this across the board, and a lot of the sort of podcasts and things where I keep a finger on the pulse is this, the women are asking where are all the good men gone, and the men are asking where are all the good women gone. And it's like, we're probably going to be obliged to put some effort into repairing that pretty soon.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that the Grail really showed me, and for context, the Grail is our sequel to the Spear. Spear being our men's rite of passage into masculinity and introduction of masculine archetypes. The Grail is the polarity to that. So it's the healing with and connection to and the devotion toward the feminine in the form of women, and the feminine in the form of nature, the great divine, the feminine within. And, one of the things that I recognized from that, and I think you pointed out to me, was what is the good of being good men if we are not then in devotion to the 50% other half of our population, but also the symbiotic second half of the whole, within self, within a spiritual context, within a
technocratic utopia. It's obviously very influenced by the capitalist, communist discourse of the last century. But you end up with this cohort of high tech, completely everything's looked after for them, people that are basically reproduced in labs, and they have all these social caste systems. And it follows the name of this person sort of breaking out of that matrix and ends up going to what they call the reserves, which is where there are primitive people living how they used to live. And I sort of see, I can see this parallel where we end up with one cohort of society in this sort of technocratic nightmare utopia where everything is perfect and glossy and smooth and genetically modified to perfection and seamlessly run by AI. And then where I probably interested in heading is out to somewhere where we've dug a well and we've got a forest, had some game and a pond we can fish in, and like, real human interaction going on. Like, I often think of if we think of the collective humanity as an individual, the work we do, we generally see that the individual reaches a crisis, an internal crisis, before the change happens. And if I apply that logic to humanity, I think we're reaching our crisis point as a collective, from which the explosive growth, the big reason why comes through. Things have to get bad enough for people to sit up, get out of their lethargy, take off the fucking scales off their eyes, and want to fucking do something about it. And from my experience, even in my own life, things have to get pretty bad quite often before the instinct to fucking get up and do something about it kicks in. So I'm just curious when we'll find that as a collective.
Yeah, I think all things are as they were supposed to be. All things are going in the way that they are probably always destined to have gone, where technological innovation gets to a certain point where our biology becomes redundant. And so it begs the question, why? Why choose? Because there will be points, I think, in the relatively near future, maybe not immediate, but let's say decades, where human consciousness is potentially transferable onto computers, where the experience of the physical human is no longer confined, right, to one body, one life. The super intelligent AI and then, out of the AGI that's coming, is very likely to be able to solve for age, solve for mortality, solve for every disease we have. And the apocalyptic version of this future looks like humans become an obstruction. They become redundant. They become ancillary to whatever the AGI determines is its purpose. And yeah, there's a lot of conversation, a lot of talk about the alignment problem. And the alignment problem is, how do we ensure that a system that can reproduce, improve, rewrite, and essentially author itself beyond our ability to perceive it, we can't understand it. What's inside that black box is no longer discernible to us, well beyond our ability to stop it. That's that event horizon, that runaway train that can't be put back, the Pandora's box, whatever analogy you want to use. When you get to that point, how do you ensure that everything that happens after that is on the basis of aligned intent and aligned values? And the smartest people in this conversation, who are much smarter than me, see that as the largest single existential risk to humanity that we've ever encountered after atomic warfare.
So it's post-humanism. And I think it's really funny because in some ways we're sort of describing ourselves in that. We're just building a giant mirror. We already live inside an incredibly advanced simulation we don't understand. And we are capable of bilocation and traveling between dimensions. It's the human mind. It's consciousness. So I wonder, like, what are we trying to prove? Is it this fact that we think this is such a material, culturally, just a purely materialistic accident that we exist, that we're trying to create this meaning generator where, from my point of view, and this is why my purpose is what it is, we already have the answers in here, in the world around us. This is already an infinitely complex mystery with all the solutions to all its own problems contained within itself. And we're trying to make, like, I think people are selling themselves short when they say they need AGI to do this stuff for themselves. You'd have peace. What's our instinct? But I guess also the fundamental driver of consciousness, as far as I've been able to discern it from many different lineages of mysticism, is that it's exploration. Yeah. It's not inherently good or bad. It just wants to experience. It's just asking, who am I? What am I? And creating these and making AI is one of the fucking questions. Can I build a fucking version of myself within the world of form using silicon and fucking electricity? So it's all valid at a meta point of view, and it will all be very interesting. However it plays out, I'm down. I'm here for the ride.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that in the future, to essentially have strated societies where bioengineering, AI, and essentially a new life form that's no longer purely biological, and then having folks who are committed to the human experience as current feels like an inevitability. And I think Aldous Huxley was really a lot more accurate when he spoke about the information dissemination and social media. I've seen George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Future State looked at side by side, and he talked about the addiction to consumption and news and information. Aldous Huxley talked about a voluntary decline into consumption and consumerism and hedonism. And I think it is a... Have you heard of the Fernway's paradox?
You would have to refresh me on it. It rings a bell. I couldn't tell you what it is.
So it's the lack of discernible... I think I'm getting that name right, Fernway's paradox. It's essentially we can't see any intelligent life, even though we're looking in a lot of places. And one of the solutions to that paradox is that there is an inevitable crux of civilization advancement we get to. There's this threshold that self-destruction essentially is an inevitable feature for a large percentage of, advanced beings that get to this stage essentially where they kill themselves because they're so smart, they're too smart for their own good, and they destroy their environment. And now with the level of advancement at the speed that's here in AI, it's becoming one of the solutions to this paradox that is favorited among the, astrophysicists, I suppose, astrobiologists, saying, yeah, super advanced, self-aware, artificial intelligence and technology is probably an inevitable stage in the trajectory of any advanced civilization. And the likelihood that we pass through that threshold, I mean, there's a lot of very smart people talking about a 20 to 30% extinction risk from AGI. I mean, and I don't want to be alarmist, I don't want to be a doomsday conspiracy theorist, but we are, according to experts, 1 out of 5 chance. That's a fucking Russian roulette. 1 out of 6 chance. We are Russian roulette having the end of the world in the next, let's call it, decade, being the threshold for AGI that most people are agreeing on.
Well, it circles back to a couple of points for me. First, our initial point: are we prepared to die? Because we could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and then it wouldn't matter.
Yep.
And I think the other one is that, I guess, is an interesting point of that a growing number of people proposing that we already have had advanced civilizations here that have wiped themselves out through hubris. You're going to look at all these evidences for really advanced engineering in ancient sites. It would not surprise me at all, and it seems pretty aligned with what we've talked about in human nature, that we will reach these thresholds where we have more power than wisdom to wield it and do ourselves a complete mischief and go back. If we had a large enough apocalypse now, we have so few hard skills baked into regular people that we will go back to the Stone Age. People couldn't build a bow and arrow. Your average person in anywhere in the world couldn't purify. It doesn't take much, especially now that we've transferred all our knowledge onto these very delicate silicon chips, for it all just to hard reset and try again. So I wouldn't be surprised. I like to think, and my sense is that we are heading towards a real revolution in human consciousness. I think we're entering into the darkness that precedes the breakthrough. That's why I am committed to being alive and doing the work that I want to do and shoulder to shoulder with you. So without being doomsday, I think, like we discussed this in our last podcast, we've got to have something to move away from as well as something to move towards. And I think without wanting to be alarmist, I would say there is some urgency in this call to action to self-actualize and to be of service to other people and to take the blinkers off and start to see what's going on in the world and in myself. I'd say it's urgent. It's an urgent call to action now. To quote Gandalf, the board is set and the pieces are moving. It's time to start playing the fucking game. Stop sitting around fucking wanking off.
Agreed. The need for things to come to crisis. What do you think it is about men that has us operate in this way? And we spoke a little bit about this last time, but I'm curious to explore it a little deeper. Why do we wait for things to break before we change them?
One thing springs to my head is that we're potentially always trying to fix it until it breaks in some way, as best we know how. And so until it breaks, you're not ready to ask for help, maybe. I think we don't have any cultural framework to get support early. We're not taught how to identify when things are starting to go off the rails early. And I also think men want to have it under control. We want to be seen to have it under control, and we want to tell ourselves we have it under control and keep that illusion going until the train comes completely off the tracks in a giant cloud of smoke and explosion. And you go, oh yeah, actually I wasn't doing well for a couple of years before that.
Well, it's this thing about competence, right? The masculine is measured by what he can create, and the feminine is measured by what she preserves. You know, men start their life at the bottom of the mountain, and they're measured by how far they climb. Women, purity, innocence, virtue starts at the top of the mountain, and like it or not, they are often measured by how far, they allow that to fall. Because a woman is biologically, physiologically, inherently valuable in terms of the procreation of the species, right? A man is valuable to the extent that he can contribute. So I think baked into our design is an imperative for competence. Men want to be capable and competent, and the acknowledgement that we don't have it under control, I think, has a biological origin. I think we don't want to not be competent. We don't want to not be able to hunt and provide.
Because
challenge.
Sometimes you do. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. You go on.
Yeah. So, the challenge for that then makes it a matter of communicating early the things that men are experiencing that they're not aware are leading them to an undesirable place. You are in the forest right now. You can't see the trees. Here are the signs you are in a forest. You will eventually become lost if you continue to wander in this forest. Be aware you are dreaming.
Well, it comes back to trust and brotherhood, doesn't it, man? Like, some of the feedback we received on our tribe was that to be able to either call forward or admit weakness in front of men of such high integrity and such high levels of trust that they're not going to pounce on you, because it's a mission of weakness to not have things under control. And that's vulnerable. And in a world where kill or be killed, which has been most of our history, any admission of weakness was an opportunity with loss of face and an opportunity for an opponent to take advantage of you. And so I think what we have in Primal is so rare and so potent in that our brothers, we can all say to each other at a certain point, I'm actually not coping right now, and there isn't that threat of reprisal. But that takes cultivation and work to create that space and a processing of the trauma that prevents that state of vulnerability. Take a bit of taking off of the armor in order to be able to show weakness around your allies. People who may look after you.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these tension points that I come to. I don't like the word vulnerability. And for that reason, I think when we have a popular narrative that's trying to program men into becoming women by saying you must be, entirely identified with your feelings. You need to be soft. You need to be vulnerable. You need to be, insert wonderful feminine qualities, but with no corresponding emphasis on the masculine qualities, strong and, courageous and powerful and, dominant socially, dominant in life, dominant as a force. Be a strong masculine man is not the narrative that men are receiving. And so, the idea that we need to be vulnerable, and that if you're not vulnerable as a man, there's something wrong with you, is, I think, unhelpful. And, like you spoke about earlier, there's been no point in human history where, as a man, being vulnerable at large is evolutionarily advantageous amongst mate, partner, competitors inside a tribal environment. Vulnerability probably wouldn't have been seen as strong from the women and would have been seen as weakness and potential opportunity from competitors, right?
A counterpoint word. How about honesty? Being honest with your brothers.
That's what I've said.
Yeah.
Yep.
I put that all together in my head just then, but yeah.
It's exactly the word that I advocate for. Be honest. Yeah. And I think it has a different ring to it. It has a different energy. There's a king in it. I don't think vulnerability sits in any of the archetypes. If we think about the king, warrior, lover, magician, logically it would sit in the lover. But I actually see vulnerability as a disowned state. It's going to be controversial to say that. I don't believe in it. I believe men should be honest. Quality. No, I believe men should be compassionate. I believe men should be have empathy. I believe men should have kindness. I believe men should be authentic. Men should be honest. Men should be kind, but vulnerable. Why would I want to be vulnerable in a sense of the definition of vulnerability is demonstrating your weakness. And I looked it up the other day, and I'm going to pull it up while you talk. You go ahead.
No, it's an interesting one, man. And I think, like, even reflecting on my previous relationships and on those really intense emotional states, I've seen a few sort of relationship coaches and interesting people on the internet talking about polarity and the dynamics. So you don't cry and lose the plot in front of your woman. It's it removes that sense of safety, because I don't have it together if I'm a weeping wreck on the floor. Like, who's at the fucking helm for a start? And I can see wisdom in that. I can see wisdom I might bring that to my brother. I might come up to specifically Dom, and I have in the past, and broken down. Like, I'm fucking challenged right now. I'm not doing okay. And be witnessed by a man, right, who I'm like this with, who's going to go, cool, sit with it, give me a hug at the end and go, you know what to do. But to do that to my feminine counterpart, I can really see the wisdom in that being a indication of unsafety. And as much as I think women say they want that, from a lot of what I've read and a lot of what I've studied, that's not actually the case. And this is why I think the paradigm that we support, which is when you have a challenge, go to your men, your brothers, debrief it, and then come to your woman grounded, stable, together, at the helm. I think there's some wisdom in it. And look, as much as I think a lot of the stuff that, traditions, solutions to problems we forgot we had. I like that phrase. And we've done away with a lot of our traditions, and we've done away with a lot of traditional masculinity in the last century. And I think we're starting to see why those traditions were there. It's an interesting one, man. At some point you got to ruffle a few feathers and make a few ripples and push back a bit on this narrative that has seen so many men emasculated and disempowered, and not getting what they want out of relationships, and not giving their partners what their partner wants and needs. That's like we said at the very beginning, like this work is in no small part, specifically men's work, is for the women of the world. so that we can show up as better partners, as better leaders, as better protectors, as better providers. Like, yeah, we're doing it for them. We're doing it for the love, for the devotion.
Agreed. I'm going to read the definition of vulnerable. Adjective, exposed to the possibility of being attacked or harmed, either physically or emotionally. Or in need of special care, support, or protection because of age, disability, or risk of abuse or neglect. Nothing in there resonates for me to advocate that men operate inside of that.
Yeah, look, I tend to agree. I think honesty and its alignment with integrity are a much more suitable state to seek out and opportunity to express oneself in that format.
Provided the honesty is accompanied with authenticity. I also like the word real. I'm real, I'm honest, authentic, all of those things that I'm existing inside of the experience that I'm having, i.e. there's emotion present and I am able to express that. So I think this whole conversation needs to be framed that what I am not saying is men should hide their feelings or shut them down. What I'm not saying is that men should suppress emotion. What I am saying is that men need to understand the evolutionary imperative that a man and a woman exist inside of, which is that a woman wants to feel safe with a competent and capable partner, and that polarity means that if men collapse into and over-identify with their emotional body, there is going to be a dysregulation. There is going to be an experience of a woman feeling like she needs to hold you. She needs to hold a man, emotionally or physically. And, you know, I was having a conversation with one of our bros. I won't name him by name, but he was someone who, you know, crewed on the very first spear with us. And he's a man who was very identified with his lover, very strong lover archetype. And he had sat in a lot of circles and shared a lot of, you know, emotions and was very good at the emotional embodiment work. And I remember giving him some feedback. I was like, mate, your lover is leaky. It's leaking everywhere. It's leaky with men. It's leaky with women. It's leaky and it's not contained. And he has taken 2 and a bit years and he's circled back and we had a conversation last night. He's like, yeah, you gave me that feedback. He's like, I finally understand what it is actually to be in my spine, to have my balls online, to have my heart online, but to not need to collapse into the emotion of a woman I'm with.
Is he coming to the Grail?
I'd like him to. Yeah.
Look, just his inside, Jay. I think it was beneficial for us to unpack that because I think people could get caught up in semantics around the definition of vulnerability.
Yeah.
I would say there'd be a large cohort of people that use vulnerability as a space holder for more of what we're talking about. So I think it was good to create that clarity there. It's not about repressing emotions and that, but it is about finding an integral way to express it in the right setting and getting the right support from the right people. But yeah, I mean, we're not doing things. It's not what we've currently done culturally for a while is obviously not working. And so I think as much as what we're doing in Primal and what we talk about is going to be hit a nerve for some people, good. There's a button there to be pushed.
Good.
There's work to do there. You know, and you never run out of buttons. Don't worry. I certainly haven't.
So I've been working on the master framework, right, as part of the distillation of all the things that we do, and have come up with these 5 Ps, power, purpose, pack, now prosperity and partnership, that relate to, you know, the business coaching work and then the Grail. And it's in this nice 5-pointed. What's the spiritual significance of the pentagram, by the way, the 5-pointed?
Oh, mate, I'd have to do some research for you on that.
I think
that's into a whole bunch of geometry and
yeah. I'd love to learn because, you know, as we had, I've got these 5 pillars. You know, I've identified these 5 pillars now. It came into this pentagram shape, or at least I think that's a pentagram, right? 5-pointed.
Pentagram. 5.
Penta. Yep. I was bending my brain trying to come up with the thing that sits in the middle. Essentially, what is the ultimate desire, the ultimate need and want for men, and how are they fulfilled by these 5 pillars? And I read this pretty epic book called The Social Paradox. It's an evolutionary biologist, evolutionary psychologist, works out of UQ, interviewed by Rogan and Williamson and a bunch of others. His name is Bill. You know what I think we need on this podcast is we need a Jamie.
I've had that thought already.
Anyway, The Social Paradox. In this book, he shares this idea that all human needs and wants essentially stem from or are driven by 2 things. All human wants and desires come from wanting and desiring only 2 things, is autonomy and connection.
Yeah.
That everything comes out of those 2, or combinations of the both. And yeah, I wanted to explore that idea with you and challenge it. Have you got the author?
I've got the author just up here. So the little AI result, the social paradox of human needs and wants, describes the tension between our fundamental need for connection and belonging and our desire for autonomy and individuality. Paradox highlights modern life at its emphasis on personal choice and freedom can sometimes leave us feeling disconnected and unfulfilled despite having our material needs met.
Who's the author?
William von Hippel.
Yeah, Bill von Hippel or William von Hippel. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about that idea? Well, I'm putting you on the spot here because I've pondered this a bit.
It looks at the fundamental of all things being a tension between 2 opposing forces. So it's going to be the middle way invariably, and in every case of everything. There's always going to be absolutely. If the individuation pulls too far, you're isolated. If the connection pulls too far, there's no sense of self or autonomy. I think at the moment we're probably too far in individuation. And it comes down to that nuclear family, those separate houses, there's no generational living. It's almost impossible to raise a family economically. It's very difficult to find a suitable partner. Like, we're definitely too individual.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it look like to bring back connection? It's really difficult because we've lost religion. And for valid reasons, I think, across the board. Our country of Australia, if I do know where our community exists is in sport.
Yeah.
You know, like if you like, I've got a friend with 2 kids, they both play footy. That's pretty beautiful. It's
Sport
together, it's really wholesome.
Sport replaced religion, I think, in Australia. And I mean, literally, they call the the stadiums cathedrals. It's where they go. It's where they go to worship, and they have the gods, who are the men running around that represent the different qualities and archetypes, and they have posters and statues and effigies to the gods, and it's the game played in heaven. Like, the number of analogies from sport that create that, essentially fill that vacuum.
The point I was sitting on, just talking about individuation and community, the other reality is that community is right there if we choose to look for it. I think, your neighbour lives across the fence from me. Have you ever spoken to them? Do any of us really put in the necessary effort to seek out community before making these blanket statements of I'm there? Like, I found extraordinary community in rock climbing, in spearfishing, in a whole range of things if you choose to seek it out. So put a bit of onus back on the individual and say, if you're not feeling connected, like, I can do something about it.
Yeah, 100%.
Lots of lonely people.
Yeah, and it's never been easier to find your micro niche, as we spoke about, last time we caught up. So yeah, this book, this idea that this 2 fundamental human needs drives everything, and I wanted to explore the holes. I tried to pick some holes in it, and me and GPT were exploring this idea, and GPT actually said play, pure presence and joy, and sacrifice were 3 things that it posited were gaps in the dualistic model proposed by von Hippel. And I've got some theories, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. do you think play as a pure expression of enjoyment fits into one or both of connection or autonomy?
It could probably bridge the gap. I mean, play is a state of mind as well. Anything can be play, depending on how you choose to approach it. I know that I can go and play golf by myself and have a completely different and really rewarding experience, or I can go play golf with a bunch of mates and it be different and rewarding in different ways. I can turn my work into play if I choose to, and if I find that flow within myself. But yeah, I think it could be expressed, individual excellence or excellence on a team.
Yes, play for me, like if I'm dancing in a room to some music, am I connecting or am I being independent, autonomous? And I think I'm doing both, because I'm connecting to the present, I'm connecting to my body, I'm connecting to the experience of joy, right? To the experience of the pleasure of being. But I'm also expressing my individuality, I'm having physical movement, which is by its nature autonomous, right? I'm expressing autonomy and connection at the same time. And I think that's part of the magic of play, is that it fulfills those needs at the same time, which is why it's so potent. So what about sacrifice of self in order to serve a greater good? So the example it gave was martyrs.
I like that, mate. I thought about martyrdom about 20 minutes ago in our conversation. I'm glad it's come up. I see that as the ultimate union of the two.
How so?
It's an opportunity where like self-annihilation brings you into like the supreme union with the people you're sacrificing yourself for, and is also a complete expression of your own autonomy to choose that.
Your answer is way better than GBT's.
I'll hang in there for a couple more years, mate.
Yeah. Score one for the humans. Yeah. So the other example that it gave was connection to the divine or spirituality, faith. And I thought, again, that is the ultimate connection, because in the pursuance of a spiritual practice, many traditions essentially have you dissolving the belief of separation, that we are all part of one. We are all one consciousness experiencing itself. And that when we die, we, return to oneness, and that oneness exists everywhere. And that the individual separation that you might go on a monastic journey, autonomy, right? You go away into the mountains and meditate in a cave for a decade, you are seeking autonomy, but in that way, you're also seeking connection to God.
Well, I think like I can experience deep and fulfilling connection to myself. I think a lot of people aren't up for that. So I've certainly spent long phases of my own life not being happy connected to myself, not being content in connection to myself. And I think that has a beautiful parallel to connection with the divine. So I think like ultimately this is the thing of any meta truth, is that we have to explore them by reducing them down to dualistic things, so we can have some tension so it can exist. And that ultimately it's all going to come back together. Like, yeah, it's an interesting exercise. Like, but yeah, even connection to self, I think, so many people are running from themselves. Like I said, I spent a lot of my life running from myself. I didn't like what I found when I looked inside. And I think that's the first process of individuation, and it's necessary before I could have really meaningful connection with others.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And it's only been a very recent experience for me to genuinely go inside and find something that was really noble and beautiful. The story I shared last time about the medicine journey. And I think there is a natural part of our design to go within and self-audit where there are things which are necessarily not the way we want them to be. Meaning like if our self-examination gave us the green tick all the time and we're in lethargy and dysfunction and, things in our life aren't going the way that we want them to go, how would we ever improve? So I think there's something hard-coded into human beings of being self-critical, I suspect. And I'm interested to explore this idea with you. I certainly have a very strong inner critic. and I know where it comes from. You know, my early years, you know, my dad was, bless him, you know, driven by excellence and driven by achievement and driven by success. Gave me wonderful gifts of excellence and drive and achievement. The corollary to that is that there is an almost constant voice in my head that sees the gap between what I did and what I could have been. When I got an A minus, and bless him, there's no criticism here at all. It's a wonderful gift that he gave me. But when we got an A minus, he's like, "What? Why the minus?" You know, well, got 97%. It's like, what happened to the 3%? You know, there's like that consistent pursuit of excellence. And again, I want to be clear, it's a gift. I'm so grateful for it. Do you think self-criticism, self-auditing on the below the line of the ledger, overemphasizing the below the line, you know, marks down, so to speak, is a part of the human condition?
It certainly doesn't seem like everyone's burdened with it.
I've really
burdened with the need for excellence. But I think it would come down to, again, balance by finding the if we look at shadow is to be integrated, not rejected.
Right.
So where's the fine point where strive to excellence, and when it comes time to deliver, accept whatever's ready is ready. Like I do this with my cooking, Jay. As soon as I sit down to start eating a meal I've cooked, if it's a serious undertaking for a lot of people, I immediately start critiquing it.
100%.
I enjoy it while I'm eating it, and it's delicious. But part of that's love of the process.
Yep.
Part of it's wanting to iterate and be better. But I guess it depends. Is it costing you something? Does it is the stress?
But is it part of but is it part of the human condition? Is it
for excellence?
Is it part of the human condition to overemphasize the minuses when we're giving ourselves a score? That we see what's missing more than we see what's there.
I think it's shadow to be integrated. I think it probably is pretty universal. I think, you know, there are evolutionary markers for that in terms of we're always looking for threats. We're filtering for negative more than we filter for positive. I don't think it has to stay that way. I think if it causes people a great deal of stress and unhappiness and a loss of peace, then it's out of whack. But if it has its rightful place of helping support growth and evolution and integration of things, then it's good. So it's just balancing it.
Yeah, I think it is I think it is baked into the design. I think if caveman was sitting on his cave couch and putting his feet up on his cave futon and watching cave Netflix, aka the fire, and was supremely satisfied with himself and all of who he is and how he's living his life, and, you know, I'm good. If there wasn't a sense of dissatisfaction with self or dissatisfaction with the current lot, there would have been no imperative for striving. There would have been no imperative for improvement. I think continuous improvement is baked into the design. It's my theory. Now, I'm only existing inside of my own consciousness, so I don't know what it's like in anyone else's. And I've done a fair bit of work on improving the way I speak to myself. But in the same way that I am much more likely to go out of my way for someone else, and much more likely to be kind to someone else than kind to self. And this is universal. I have never met a man who came to me at the beginning of his journey of personal development and self-awareness that was kinder to himself than he was to others. Never.
No, that's one of the last things to hear. It's one of the core precepts of the practice of loving kindness in Buddhism. Is a real emphasis that it has to start within. That's the most important place for it to be expressed.
Yeah.
And it will be the most healing place for it to be expressed, but it's certainly not the natural place to express it or the instinctual place to express it. It is like, I think it's also in support of that cosmic curiosity. What's next? What else? Like, I think about how I came to rock climbing. Like, I'm not necessarily a really push hard athlete, but I was consistent. I climbed 3 or 4 times a week for 5 years.
Wow.
And I became excellent just through reps, not through fucking completely trashing myself, because I wanted to be able to come back and climb the next day. And it was just increment, bit by bit, until I was climbing the hardest grade climbs in the gym. So there are many ways to skin that cat, and many ways that drive to improve can show up. But yeah, I think there is. I think ultimately baked in is a desire to improve, to explore,
and that starts with an evaluation of self that produces a delta. It starts with a deficiency. It does. There is something lacking, and what's really interesting for me is that so many of the wisdom and spiritual traditions are essentially at their core helping to reprogram the human machine and the human software for an environment that was either maladaptive or no longer suited to the human animal. That we live inside of for example, threat detection and perception of risk. Very, very unlikely day to day for any of us to exist in an environment where we are at physical risk of harm. And, the majority of places where people are listening to this, that's probably the case. But
which is fucking wild.
It is fucking wild. So much of our physiology, so much of our psychology, so much of our biology is designed to keep ourselves alive in very adverse environment and conditions. And as a result, most of our behaviors, I would say, or a large portion of our behaviors are maladaptive to, the environment, or the environment's maladaptive to, the design, right? Hence self-criticism. It's going around in circles in my own head. I literally had the Forge call on Monday night. 6 men in the subgroup inside of the Forge call shared something along the theme of negative self-talk. The dissatisfaction that they had with their own success. And by objective measure, all of us were relatively, if not pretty successful. Financially, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. We're all in the work. We're all doing the thing. We've all got families and businesses and incomes and homes, and we're functioning members of society. And yet the stated primary challenge for 6 men in this room were negative self-talk.
It's a tough nut to crack. I think, there was this beautiful woman who facilitated a medicine circle I was in, and she said something that stuck with me. It's that awakening is not affecting oneself, it's radical self-acceptance.
Yeah.
That you are perfect. Like, in this present moment, I am perfect right now. It's not going to be a future destination. I can keep iterating and evolving through the continuum of this present moment, but there's no over there to go to. There's no up there to reach. It's always going to be right now. And I think that comes back to one of our conversations around the peace that surpasses all understanding, is that real peace is reached when I stop trying to use my mind to find peace and just let myself be peaceful. Allow it. Jesus talked about a word in the Bible that's sort of mistranslated when he said, "Suffer the children to come to me." He meant suffer in the term allow. And in the same way, when the Buddha talks about life being suffering, life is about allowing the process of life to unfold. We suffer when I start to fucking punch on with life and fucking resist, stop resisting. When I start to resist the growth, and then I start to resist the healing, and when I start to resist the emotions that are coming up in me, that's when I suffer. If I allow it, and I observe it, and I accept that this is what I need, and this is where I am right now, then even if it's uncomfortable, at least I can accept it and be okay with it, instead of 10xing my fucking pain and discomfort by struggling against it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an interesting balance to be struck in there between self-acceptance and self-improvement, because, and this may just be my warrior king, the yang orientation that I am generally operating from, that has me say, fuck that. If I was self-accepting, I'd just booze it up and have a great time and fuck who I wanted, and I'm just accepting of myself, I did this thing and I did that thing and I broke my word and I did all this stuff and I just accept myself. You know, what's to stop self-acceptance becoming a crutch for self-validation of fucking stupid choices?
Well, that is the risk, and that is a sort of categorical expression of spiritual bypassing in its most fundamental sense. I think the reality is that I think it's Jordan Peterson might have talked about this. The existence of a conscience.
Yeah,
is that
healthy shame.
Yeah, I could cruise around, but there is some fundamental part of my spirit that is not content with that, and really resents me treating myself like that. And as much as I can accept and integrate that part of me, the behavior will have to shift for me to actually experience peace.
Do you think it's fundamental? Because I'll share my own version of that, right? So in the early part of, well, the origin story for me, and I haven't shared it in this context, I'll just give a brief summary, was divorced and then bounced between what I would describe as unhealthy or dysfunctional and shorter relationships, and was of the belief it was everyone else that was the problem until I recognized I was the common denominator, recognized it was me. And I was genuinely unaware of my behaviors and genuinely unaware of the impact they were having. Whether that was, and it sounds ridiculous to say this, at the time I had justified to myself that being unfaithful was a victimless crime. That I was doing something that was fulfilling a need for me, you know, let's say a marriage that was sexless, that I wasn't willing to pay the price and the cost of dissolving a marriage because of a need that I was getting fulfilled elsewhere. I didn't have the moral fiber or the standard of integrity to recognize that that was eating me from the inside, and that the cost and consequence to other was catastrophic. Well, not catastrophic, but, you know, significant. It was when I went through the process of initiation and self-reflection and accountability and responsibility for myself that I created a framework and a moral compass for, no, I'm not going to do that because it's wrong. And the key thing for me to create that was recognizing the impact on other, then recognizing the impact on self. But it wasn't until I saw the impact of what I had done and was held accountable for that did I create what later became a moral code. So I don't necessarily agree that there's an innate sense of knowing about right and wrong. I don't know if Peterson is being quoted in that and when you're sharing, or if it's just a paraphrasing, but I don't think there is there. I don't think that exists.
The context of that clip was he was talking about conscience being an indicator for a god because you can't shut it up. But I'll circle back to the erotic and the holy, and that idea that the level 2 and level 3 thinking, but before you can go into the boundless thinking, you have to go through morality and rules.
Yes.
And so you can't so perhaps putting that realm of radical self-acceptance as being level 3 thinking, but you can't bypass firstly the honest self-appraisal. And I mean, that's a fundamental part of programs like AA as well, is a frank and honest appraisal of oneself. And in all personal development, it's a really key part of going, of identifying what needs to change, because that disturbs inner peace, not being aligned, not being congruent. That makes inner peace really hard to achieve. Yeah,
Peterson talks about confession being the first stage in any transformation. And without intending for it to be, I recognize that my first opening stanza conversation with any man is confession. What's not working in your life right now? And what is generally then led in the discussion is what he is responsible for. So within 15 minutes of a conversation with a stranger coming in from a Facebook ad, I generally result in what amounts to a confession. and not from a place of me feeling like I'm here to forgive him or ordain him or have him seek his penance and all that. It's just, that's the reality. He's confessing what he is seeing himself as responsible for changing, things within himself. And if he's not able to identify that, it's a very quick end to the phone call. You need more pain. Go away and come back when you can addict. When you need more pain, and you need to clean the mirror, my man, so you can see that there's a man staring back at you that's responsible for all of the shit fuckery you're in. But I want to come back to levels of thinking. Remind me, what was the first level of thinking? I've just forgotten it.
I could not tell you. The second level was morals and ethics. The third level was boundless. Perhaps the first level was boundaried?
Well, yeah, I think...
Jamie, bring that up. Could we get an AI assistant to do this for us?
I reckon, yeah. We'll have to fucking do
GPTs.
that. Invite a GPT into the conversation.
Or do we need a VA from the Philippines or something just to sit? We're anything. Outsource it.
See the little face here in the corner. Yeah, let's do it. I reckon we can make it happen. So, yeah, have to go through the boundaries to then get to boundless.
Fuck, that's such a chewy book, bro. But only little nibbles and then have you go in.
What have been some key takeaways for you?
The states of Eros, the seeking to be on the inside. Yeah, dude, and
the being on the inside of the face of God.
Yep. And the creations of false Eros. I guess the retreat from the erotic into the sexual as being like a huge part of what we've identified in this breakdown of the social contract and this expression of eroticism. Coming back to my really initial people don't dance together anymore.
Yeah.
Like you think about going clubbing now, there's no social contract that brings you into that little play of eroticism. It's really gross and everyone's scantily clad, but no one's having sex. No one's actually coming to that place of eroticism because it's all repressed and internalized in imagery, so people look sexy.
Yep.
But there isn't, imagine full long dress and a suit for the man, but you're cheek to cheek doing a waltz or a foxtrot or something. That's erotic. Whereas like the kind of grinding and bumping in a nightclub, that's just, the magic's not there. It's a gross in the term of it's an external expression of sexuality and erotic. So that makes a lot of sense to me. Just his breakdown of that we've lost the eroticism and it's retreated into the sexual, but that sexuality mimics eroticism. It's not eroticism. Like
coming into oneness, essentially seeking union. That's what Eros is seeking oneness with the divine and seeking it through the experience of aliveness and richness. And I loved his definition of Eros. Eros is the shiner, as he keeps saying. Sounds like Trump talking about China. So for those who are wondering what the fuck we're talking about, it's Mark Gaffney's Erotic and the Holy. And man, there's a can of worms we could open around Mark Gaffney's involvement with the Aubrey Marcus polarity or triad conversation. So Gaffney has shot to some notoriety recently because of his involvement with facilitating the three-way relationship that Aubrey Marcus is in. And I don't want to go down that. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole.
Let that go.
If their name rings a bell, that's because there's some context there around it. But Hebrew mysticism, who knew it had such juicy? I mean, I had never explored it. Right, I didn't know what was inside, and Kabbalah, holding a lot of parallels.
Scratch the surface. They're all talking about the same thing, man. The mystical traditions, like any crown teachings from anywhere. The Gnostics, the Kabbalah, the Vajrayana Buddhists. All of them. It's transcending.
Except the Christians. The Christians lost the feminine.
There are sects of Christian mystics that have a much more holistic view, and I only have a very passing involvement because a friend of mine was at a Christian mystical church for a little while. But yes, the Christians have probably. But I mean, I imagine there would be a pure origin for Islam as well. You know, like I think there would be wisdom keepers that have kept the essences for all of them, even if there's just one or two. I suspect because they all come from the same place.
Well, it's been interesting to watch, and this was something that I explored when I was developing the content for the Grail, is to see the evolution of Christianity. And this is a really big topic, which, we won't be able to get into in full, but boiling down to an essential thing that's missing from Christianity, there was two parts. One is shadow integration. There is no dark side that's welcomed. It is a belief system. I believe Father, Son, and Holy Ghost, the Trinity, is an orientation towards the divinity and ascension, and there is no descent. And Satan and the devil is cast out and he's pushed away. And in Jung's analysis of Christianity and why he believed that the Grail was a myth that contained such value for Western civilization was the reintegration of the anima, the feminine, and also the owning and the integration of the shadow. And if I look at Christianity as a whole, and I know there's a fucking myriad of subsects and permutations inside of there, so it's a very, very broad strokes to sort of say Christianity, but something that is missing is that connection to eroticism, that welcoming the nature of the human condition as a pursuit toward the connection to God in a beautiful way, in a expression of eroticism as God experiencing itself as connection to itself.
It is an interesting perspective. The New Testament is very much that pure Christ teaching. There is a book in the Old Testament, the Song of Solomon, which is quite deeply erotic, and I think Gaffney references it in the erotic and the holy. But I am also it's so far from its origins. I'm reading a book called God's Secretaries at the moment about the translation of the King James Bible, 1604. And it's obvious, it's written by a non-Christian, but just to start to understand the cultural context of these translations 1,600 years after Christ's existence, it's just iterated and colored by human perception and agenda and cultural norms so many times that I think treating any modern Bible like gospel is dubious. There is extraordinary value even in something like the King James Bible. That's what I grew up reading in my family. You could spend a lifetime studying it and get really rewarding wisdom from it. But I think, and again, this comes back to my purpose, I think that all of us are capable of having a direct connection to divinity. And if divinity is not just this might, it's everything. Not all the reduced ideas in the cultural collective mind of God being this being in the sky. I think upon any deep investigation of Christian literature or anything else, there's much more going on there than meets the eye, and it requires diligent personal inquiry. It's like Christ said, those that have eyes, let them see, those that have ears, let them hear. It's like it's all there, but you have to seek it out, and you have to find the right frame, you have to examine it, and you have to ask the right questions. So yeah, again, you can't outsource this stuff to, and this is why we lost religion, because it failed to do its job. It failed to hold us in. It failed to provide us with the mystical experience, the direct mystical experience.
It created too many middlemen in the supply chain.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I don't know if you've seen this in your sphere or in your feed, I should say. It's where we most get our information these days. But I've seen and noticed a trend toward particularly women following the path of Mary Magdalene and following the path of the Rose, which is, the exploration of locations that were spoken about in the literature for the Holy Grail. So Avalon, where Camelot was supposed to be, and locations sort of dotted around that Mary Magdalene was supposed to have journeyed, and the symbol of it being the rose. And about 5 different women in the last month or two, I'm seeing connections and friends have done this pilgrimage that's done through France and up into England, and Glastonbury and the festival there, and its connection to this Avalon and the Arthurian legends. And Christianity has been crying out for a reunification of the masculine and the feminine. Christianity as a scaffolding upon which the Western civilizations were built is, I think, in part a root cause to the confusion that we have now between masculine and feminine polarity in our roles, and the sacredness and the reverence that would have existed in pre-Christian cultures to the feminine has been, eroded and ultimately lost in many ways. I mean, there's a re-emergence of it and there's a reconnection with it. But it's, I think, an essential stage in the journey for a man reaching his power is to arrive at a place where he is in adoration, reverence, and devotion to the feminine, and the feminine within. I don't know if you believe in this idea of the inner feminine. What's your take on this? I've seen both arguments made really well. Do you think we have an inner feminine, masculine and feminine within us as men, according to Jung?
I do. I think you and I have had this conversation a couple of times off air. I think that the first thing to do is to detach masculine and feminine from our ideas of gender. That's a gross final expression of it. I see the importance of all of those elements, like the ability to feel, the ability to flow, the ability to nurture. These are all qualities that I will also have to have online, and so I think, and the ability to intuit, like I'm a deeply, deeply intuitive person, and that's traditionally put us in that yin feminine function. So yeah, I think that we are, while we are expressed dualistically in these bodies in the grossest material form as separate things, that within each being, the consciousness is an expression of the whole. That's my take on it, and particularly delineating that idea of masculine and feminine with our idea of gender, and go, these are just the two opposing complementary forces that actually create the tension for all existence. And so, of course, we have that tension within us as well as individuals, regardless of the body we have.
Yeah, I agree philosophically, and what I've chosen to do in practice is to distinguish using the archetype framework that we both know well around the lover and the magician as the yin side of the ledger, because in part there has been so much feminization, let's say, of men, to have them over-identify with that side of their psyche, of their qualities and character traits. And I do wonder, if there's been an overcorrection within myself and an abandonment of, or an abdication of, the feminine, believing on some level for that to be undesirable for a man, that a man who is feminine it's a disparagement. So I'm aware of that, and I'm willing to look at that as a growth area. But I really like the way you distinguish that it's the gender is the grossest expression, meaning the most practical, tangible expression of the essences of this masculine and feminine that, can exist independent of gender within the self. And look, Carl Jung, smarter than you and me, identified these forces. Too smart. A man that really, in a lot of ways, I think, transcended definition. If you think about Jung's work, it's not philosophy, it's not psychology, It's not spirituality, but it is all of them.
Yeah, I think Peterson described him as being so intelligent. He was formulating questions so many orders of magnitude beyond the normal person's thought that we couldn't even comprehend the answers. We couldn't comprehend the questions, let alone the answers. And from my very brief and slow foray into his work, I can fucking attest to that, man. It was chewy going.
Anything feeling present for you before we wrap up?
I'm feeling pretty good, brother. I think I've got 25 minutes before a call for our next guest speaker in one of our containers. So, dude, I don't know. Can we spend a couple of minutes just on how?
Yeah, let's. Oh, bro. So for context, one of the programs that we run is called the Roundtable. The Roundtable is a mastermind community for men who are in the creation or in the execution of a purpose-driven business. So it's a collaboration, it's contribution, it's co-creation of businesses that make a positive impact in the world. And as part of this, we have guest speaker once a month. If you're interested in hearing more about the Roundtable and what we do, reach out, send me a DM, connect with us, Facebook or Instagram. But inside of that, we just had a guest speaker who is a fucking weapon. Holy shit. The guy that was doing body language reads on a screen full of Zoom faces that had us, I was sweating and my mouth was dry from the level of, I don't know what it was, unconscious anxiety at the fact that he was just reading me. Were you experiencing the same thing?
I got actual anxiety before I asked him the question. I'm like, fuck, this never happens to me. And I'm like, a little bit of my heart rate up.
This guy can see into my soul.
Can I zoom in the chat on here?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Scott Taylor from, is it Presidium Group? It's a security specialist, but his particular niche is behavioral identification and body language. And he delivered an hour masterclass for our roundtable. And like Jason was saying, he was mid-delivery of his content, using people in the Zoom meeting as examples, identifying. I think he put a few people slightly on tilt, I think. I certainly would have felt called out if he can lend in on me.
I think he was generously not coming after me as host and facilitator, as not to, take me down a peg, but the hand gestures, the movements, the blink rate, he had us down to what the blink rate was and what that meant, and the position and tilt of the head, and the amount that he was able to read in what probably would have been a couple of centimeter size gallery view screens of people on Zoom was extraordinary. And what he was able to extrapolate or conclude from that was magic, man. It was black magic.
Oh, I just sent him a message before saying, literally calling him a true magician. But it just blows my mind, because you and I have both probably done NLP back in the day, and I didn't get an opportunity to ask him if any of his training sort of went in that territory. But the amount that we say non-verbally, that really, really hammered that home. It's just like 95% of our communication is non-verbal, and watching his cadence and his word rate, and how he could just shift my energy just by slowing down, deepening his voice, or speeding up and it was just, humans are fucking phenomenal creatures, and our ability to learn and discern things is ridiculous if you apply yourself to it.
He was playing a room full of men on Zoom like a fucking accordion masterfully. He was just puppet master, pulling us all, the guy was a magician. If you're interested in his work, go check him out. Scott Taylor, Poseidon. We'll put his stuff in the show notes. Shout out to Scott if you're watching. You're a fucking champion. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. And man, that feels like we're here.
Feels like we're here. We can book another one in a couple of weeks, mate.
Yeah, man. Thank you for joining us. If you've listened right to the end, I appreciate you. I just want to say, if you've gotten value from this conversation, if it's given you some juicy fat to go and chew on and have great conversations, share this with somebody who might be interested in this kind of conversation. Give us a like and a subscribe, because that is how we're going to reach more men to have the kind of quality and caliber of relationship that Cal and I have, that other men that I have bring on the show. There is a wonderful community that we hold and that we love dearly in Primal, and we would love to have as many good men join us in building more impact in the world, creating more abundance, having basically more autonomy and more connection, so we can create freedom and happiness and fulfillment in men's lives. And if that's something that you're interested in, reach out to us, connect to us, Instagram, Facebook, leave a comment here on the YouTube video if you've liked this. Thank you so much. Fucking love everybody. Appreciate you, Cal.
I heard of that, Jace. I love you, bro. Do this all day long, mother.
Motherfucker, yeah. I want this to be my full-time job. All right. Peace out, everybody.